Hello, everyone. I'm Sophie Watson, as hopefully some of you will know from our Replatforming Deplatformed Women series. I'm the co-president of the Cambridge Radical Feminist Network, and I'm here today to speak to the wonderful Sall to give you guys a bit of bonus material from our lecture series. Most of you will know Sall as the CEO and co-founder of Giggle, which is the female social network. It seems to be certainly one of the only and best protected female spaces left on the internet. And yeah, we've finally managed to sit down together today, which I'm very excited about. I've got lots of questions for Sal, and I've got a couple of questions that people have sent in as well. So yeah, hello. Thanks so much for coming.
I'm so excited to talk to you as well.
Fantastic. Yeah.
And in your introduction there, I love that you said one of the best protected, because that is the main thing with Giggle. From when we first started it, it was like, how do we keep it a female in this space?
Yeah.
And like just safe in what it actually is. So building trust with women that it is what we say it is our number one goal at the moment. So thank you so much for saying that.
No, I mean, thank you for actually making it. You chose a very a very difficult time to decide to defend a female-only space, but I suppose that's why you had to do it, perhaps.
Well, no, do you know what? To be completely honest, I didn't. Mum and I talk about this all the time because Mum is like Giggle's co-director, and it was actually her idea. She was the first one that said we should do an app for women to talk, and we were like a few wines to the wind when she said it. We thought it'd be really easy, but we were coming off what it was inspired by was my time in Hollywood and the sexual abuse that I had experienced and sexual harassment. And then also when I'd been moved to New York and needed to find a place to live, that I was also experiencing sexual harassment and essentially offers for sexual abuse. It was like, I was trying to find a room. Oh, you can live here rent free if you walk around with a kid. And I was like, can I have one area of my life where I don't have to deal with this shit?
Yeah.
And so we were focusing on that. We did not create Giggle in response to gender ideology. It actually didn't enter our mind until February of last year, when we had what is called the first trans rights activist attack on us. And I didn't know all of this stuff existed. I'm late to the party in that respect.
Yeah.
And I ran to, because it was coming from the corners of the trans right activism corners of Twitter and Reddit. So I ran there to see what was happening. And then I found the gender critical subreddit as well. And both sides told me to go and educate myself. And I was like, that's a fair thing to do. Okay, I will. And it took minutes to realize that the feminists were right.
That's why it's really dangerous to go around telling people to educate themselves about the trans debate.
Exactly. Like I did, and I do every day. A large portion of my day is spent keeping on top of all of this stuff. And I am lucky because the work that I do with Giggle, that I can have podcasts playing in the background. I can spend 10 minutes reading an article or something. So I just, anything that comes out, and there's stuff that's constant. So yeah, I'm very lucky in that respect. And that I can talk about it without getting fired.
Yeah, good to set up your own company as a strategy to avoid that.
Actually, I tweeted about it yesterday that we do get emails saying I should be fired, but so far I have not fired myself.
That will be a dark day for Giggle.
Yeah, I get the emails. Like I look at, not all the time, but most of the time I look at Giggle's main sort of email thing, and I'm like, who do you think you're talking to?
Yeah.
Mom or me.
Yeah. So. Am I right in thinking, I obviously follow you on Twitter, and I think I saw the other day, did someone email your dad and say that you ought to be fired or something along those lines?
Okay, this is a great story. So we had hired a PR company to do a media launch in Australia for Giggle. This is when the very first MVP was coming out.
Yeah.
And the company was like, leading up to it, like, no problems, all good. And then the Monday before, the party was on the Friday, the Monday before, the coders had said, the app's not ready. It's going to be another few weeks. So we contacted the PR people and they were like, it's totally fine. It's still go on. It's just, we'll get everyone, it's still, it's just a preview still. So like, okay, cool. So they said there was no problem. Anyway, so we had this event and there was no media at it, like none. So Mum and I were sort of seething throughout the night. And the other issue was it was a female only event.
Yeah.
Obviously. And the PR company had hired the event photographers and they were men. And we didn't know this until literally 5 minutes before it began. These 3 guys turned up and they were lovely. Like, don't get me wrong, they were really nice guys. But I was like, we have 3 men shoving cameras in women's faces all night. This is what we're against. Like, this is not cool. But it was very much like the show has to go on. We just have to suck it up, be professional, and just get on with it. So we did the event. It was all fine, useless, but fine. And then a few days, so then the following work week, we sat down and we arranged to have a meeting with the PR company, set the meeting. And so I wrote them an email to bullet points of everything that we were unhappy with. Yeah. They canceled the meeting and dropped us as a client. And I was like, okay, this isn't fun. Anyway, then finally, so with the owner of the company, this guy, finally got, because they then sent us this astronomical bill. And I was like, it was for a party we could have thrown. Like, it was like with our friends. It was so ridiculous. Yeah. So I sat in this meeting with him trying to tell him, like, there was no media at our media event. And he yelled at me. He told me I was disgusting. He told me it's got such a long time ago. There were so many things. Anyway, eventually I just stood up and walked out because I felt like I was, like, like the school principal. Yeah. Yeah, it was like that. Yeah, and I was like I'm a client. Like, just I wasn't like, I don't enter into everything of like, I'm a woman, you're a man. No, I was just like, I'm a client. Yeah. Was that. And so I left. And so about an hour later, my dad got an email from him saying that I needed to be managed. And that he sent the email to the only 2 men who were connected to Google, which was one of them is my dad.
I wonder why. Not to make everything about male-female relations, and yet
no, but like sometimes I don't seek out doing that. But then this happens and you have to acknowledge what it is, the reality. So because I had dealt with this man only on email prior to this. So he knew my email. He could have emailed me. There was no issues here. But he chose to email the only 2 men. Like, had he emailed my mum, I would have been, it still would have been hideously unprofessional, but I would have been like, okay, at least he emailed like the co-director of Giggle and my mum. Yeah. It just happens to be my mum, I suppose. Yeah. No, he emailed my dad and told him that he had fears for the success of Giggle if they couldn't find a way to manage me. And so I emailed him back. I said, no one else is allowed to respond to him if I want to respond to him. And I did. And I said, if you have any issues, you're welcome to discuss them with me directly. And never did.
I think it's both, it's shocking to hear. And yet I think we all recognize, I think most women will recognize that kind of feeling of someone looking past us or being in that moment of thinking that you're interacting with someone as a person and they're interacting with you as a person, whether that's in a client employer capacity or whatever else. And then suddenly realizing that the world has shifted and all along that hasn't been the dynamic. The dynamic has been a man speaking to a woman, and you're just, whether that's in, and I think there have been plenty of times in my life where that's been particularly frightening and sort of uncomfortable, when it's sort of, there's been a sexual element or a romantic element that you didn't realize was there. But then obviously this is a really good example of why of when that happens, when that's not a part of the situation.
Well, I mean, this one is in a sense a really, in the history of my life, really insignificant because the 2 meetings I've ever stood up and walked out of. And it was that one, and then there was one recently where it was with a potential Giggle investor, but he told me that He's never been sexually harassed, so he doesn't think it exists. And I just stood up and left. I was like,
probably for the best.
This is just a waste of everyone's time. I was like, I don't need to listen to this. But when I was in Hollywood, bar 2 times, all of the sexual harassment and sexual abuse I experienced was in meetings. That's where they did it. And so, and it would, whether it was like hands up skirt or pants even on a couch, it was just mortifying stuff. And so there's 100 meetings I wish I'd stood up and walked out of. So now I've got a very short tolerance for it. But it's also the thing, like, just, as we were just saying about not entering into everything as this like man versus woman. I was raised to be pretty blind to it all. Like my dad especially raised me as a guy, like in that sense. Have your opinion, you say, you question everything, you use your voice. Like it never occurred to me that I wasn't allowed to until I got to Hollywood. And when really bad stuff started happening, for the first about 18 months, I was blaming myself. I was like, oh, I mustn't be good enough. There must be something I'm doing wrong that's making this happen. Until I just went like, it was actually seeing like kind of really talentless hack writer men sort of going past me in some areas or getting jobs over me where I was like, why? Like, I know I did the better job there, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then seeing what my role actually was, that it wasn't my fault. It was just, I was the woman in the room.
There is this dynamic there, whether or not we want to acknowledge it, unfortunately.
Yeah, and it's actually dangerous to not acknowledge it. Because had I acknowledged it earlier, there's a lot of pain or like bad situations that I could have avoided and wouldn't have internalized it so much that, oh, this is my fault.
I actually think, I think that's really interesting, and that there's kind of almost this contradiction in feminism in the last couple of decades where our approach has almost been to make everything gender neutral and to sort of abolish gender. This was the topic of one of our lectures, actually. Kathleen Stock talked about gender abolition as a goal, sort of completely decoupling social norms and sort of different associations and practices from, the sex that they tend to be kind of coupled with or associated with. And there are obviously merits of that and of treating women like, a person.
People.
Yeah, exactly.
People.
And it's telling that I almost said treating women like men, when I wanted to say treating women like a person. So yeah, neutrality, like clearly important.
It's the thing. I mean, I get even the instinct to say that, and I don't ever feel guilty. Even then, do you ever find sometimes we've all done it? You've caught yourself with like a little bit of like internalized misogyny, like towards someone, but I don't even feel guilty about that. If I go, oh, hang on, whoa, why did I have that thought? As long as I now go like acknowledge, had the thought, why, let's learn something from it and grow from it, because we have misogyny around us 24/7. Of course it's part of us.
Yeah, it's so natural. Well, not natural, but you know what I mean.
It's just become natural because it's just there. It just exists so much. I mean, you can't escape it unless you were to never watch anything, read anything, do anything. And you can sit in a room.
Yeah.
And be coward, I suppose.
Well, the problem is it's in your brain, it's in your mind, isn't it? So once that's there, you do just carry it around with you and bring it to everything.
And I think we were having a discussion on Google Talk about this today, about I did a post today about what did I don't know, I've done a few today, but it was we were just sort of talking about how my thought is that there's no such thing as liberal feminism. When I hear this all the time, because I'm like, I don't want there to be fractions within feminism. I don't think that helps us at all. I don't like labels. I don't like fractions. If we're seeing anything in the world right now, none of it is doing anyone any good. And so when I see all of this stuff of like Lib Fems did this or things like that, I understand the frustration of what they're saying, and I agree. But I don't think there's such a thing as liberal feminism, because what that liberal feminism title is women who don't center women in their activism. So it's not.
Yeah.
So it's like you don't need the liberal. It's just not feminism. Feminism, the only thing it requires, the bare minimum, is it centers females. Yeah. If it doesn't do that, then it's not feminism. It can be some other humanism. That's fine. And so then we were talking about how, yeah, there has been this push in feminism of, you know, we are completely equal. Like women can do anything that men can do, and it's wrong.
Yeah.
We are different, and that's okay. And we need to learn to celebrate those differences. Like, we're not stronger than men, physically. But I would argue emotionally we are.
Yeah.
So it's like equality comes from like equality of opportunity and being allowed to just exist, and also acknowledging realities. There's no equality in life. And so us just going like, yeah, no, we're not as fast as men, and that's not a bad thing. Cool, they can run faster than us. I mean, I don't particularly think I don't really care. I want to just watch women run as fast as they can.
Yeah.
Cool, they can't beat the men. I couldn't give a shit.
Yeah.
But I don't want men running with women.
Then that's the kind of logical outcome of pretending that there's no difference, which.
Exactly. So in that sense, I do understand why there's some people that will go, hang on, with a bit of like shading forward, like, did you not bring this on a bit yourselves? Like, yeah, okay, I'll sort of wear that. Yeah. It wasn't something I was saying, but I do get, as a collective group, we were saying that. And yeah, we were wrong.
Yeah.
And helping.
You can understand the impulse or where that came from. But like, it
comes from a really good place. Yes.
Yeah. But then I guess we grow and learn and sort of become more nuanced as a movement, and hopefully kind of difference feminism, which respects the differences, will be a bit more.
This is the thing as well, is that like of all the different sort of movements or groups or philosophies for different people, there's none that gets as much shit thrown at it as feminism. And I will say this also is like the female CEO of the startup specifically for females. If you do anything wrong, if you make one tiny mistake, it's all they will highlight. And so it's the same with feminism. If we get one little thing wrong, that's all they'll talk about. Oh, well, you did say this for a bit. It's like, well, yeah, we did, and we were wrong, so we're growing from that. We're happy to admit it, and let's look at just the facts. They're like, no, but you said it. And so I'm like, no. So yeah, there's parts of it that are our responsibility, parts of it that are out of our control.
Yeah, I suppose the only thing that we can do is sort of keep having conversations about, the most effective way of promoting women's rights, which is the feminism. Yeah, I think it's interesting that you say all this, because maybe the first thing that struck me when I first signed up to Giggle and got to know the app a little bit was how kind of unapologetically feminine it is. I mean, not in the sense that it's not a welcoming space for people who are not gender conforming, because it absolutely is, but just you go in, there's pink everywhere. The name itself is Giggle. It's very sort of playful and fun. There's no kind of, I don't know. It's sort of, it moves away from the kind of the tone of a lot of feminists kind of discussion, which.
Exactly. Yes, because, okay. First of all, we know that women's oppression doesn't come from gender, it comes from sex.
Yeah. Our
biological sex. So anything beyond that is sort of, we should be able to have fun with it.
Yeah.
The name Giggle, for example, is something I've never taken that seriously. It was because part of the app creates micro groups, and we couldn't think of a name for the damn app. And I just one day Googled, what's a collective noun for a group of women? And it came back, there was Gaggle and Bevy. And I was like, well, that's shit. And so I then Googled what's a collective noun for a group of girls, and it came back giggle. Like, and if you Google it, that's what it is. And I was like, at first I did an eye roll. I was like, oh, of course it is. And I went, hang on a second. Actually, that's kind of cool. One, because it is just sort of cute and girly and fun. And I'll back that up in a second. But two other reasons were, one, gig is like techie. So I was like, oh, it's like a double entendre there. And then also alphabetically, yeah, it's right next to Google. So it's just like, there were reasons, like there were some just really realistic reasons to be like, okay, actually we can make this work. And I don't have shame in girly things. I'm not a girly sort of person. I don't wear florally things, lace, frills. I don't wear pink. I would never. Maybe pink shoes I could do. It'd have to be like a hot pink or something. But yeah, I'm not that kind of a woman either. But we spent a long time going, what should be the color for giggle?
Yeah.
We were going for purple for a while and doing research and different meanings of it, and orange at one point. And then I was like, look, at the end of the day, pink is the color that when you just, it's just the recognition. You know it's for females. And I was like, my thing was, it will just scare away some men.
Yeah.
Because they'll just know. It's like, we don't get angry that green means go and that red means stop. It's like, so we shouldn't get angry that pink means woman. No. It just is. It's just a shorthand. And so I don't apologize for that.
No, I really think that there's something powerful in the completely unapologetic kind of nature of that, you know, whether or not as an individual you kind of consider yourself girly or feminine or whatever else. I think that it kind of links to the kind of conversation about single sex spaces more generally, I think, where we often frame this debate in terms of the risks and the negatives of what happens when men come into female spaces. And there's a very good reason for why we do that, because that's incredibly compelling and important. But I think it kind of fails to pick up on the fact that there are, as well as negatives of men coming in, there are positives of just being women together, incredible positives.
100%. And that's the other thing with it being giggle is like, and just fun and sort of unapologetic about it, is because, yeah, there's a lot of really negative reasons why female spaces need to exist. Terrifying reasons. And there's a lot of negativity out there at the moment just about female spaces. So I'm kind of like, yeah, but once you're in one and you're just chatting, it's really fucking fun.
Yeah.
So we sort of just own that like, yeah, there's really serious reasons for us to exist, but we're going to lead with the fun part.
Yeah.
I'm not going to lead with the negativity. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want it to be this super serious space, because then, I mean, if you only wanted to go into Google to talk about the horrible things that happen to women every day, I mean, we'd go insane, wouldn't we?
Yeah.
Sometimes, like, there was one lady yesterday, amazing. She posted this awesome puzzle that she'd finished, and it was so brilliant. It was like a masterpiece. It was so awesome. And it's like, yeah, this is the kind of content I'm here for. We just celebrate all of these like weird little things that we do, and no one's going to come along and like sexualize everything we say or interrupt and tell us why we're wrong.
Yeah, or email your dad about why you're wrong.
I do wonder, like, because did you see? Because I tweeted about it because I think a congressman or whoever, he was senator or something in the States, had said it to that lady that if she didn't behave, he would call her daddy, which is just mortifying thing to say. And so I was wondering if the guy that did it to me, if he saw that article and like just did that cringe of like, if he's like just trying to go to sleep at night and then it like he remembers it and he's like, oh God, I'm mortified about that.
I'd like to think so. I'm kind of
let's all have that one thought that like we, you know, when you're going to sleep and you remember that you did something 15 years ago and like, oh, I'm an idiot.
Let's go with that anyway. I like that as a I was just thinking when you were talking about kind of the point of, you know, of Giggle and what you do in it and kind of the role of, I don't know, the role it has in a very practical sense of dealing with the really painful and difficult aspects of being a woman, and then the more kind of playful, fun stuff. I was also thinking about how when I've had traumatic things happen to me, when I've spoken about them with other girls, there's not a strong disconnect between the playful side and the traumatic side, insofar as the way that I think that I process those things, aside from sort of the therapy and the more intense stuff, is actually like usually getting really drunk, laughing and making completely inappropriate jokes about it.
The defense mechanism for all of us. Yeah.
And there's
you have to laugh, otherwise you're going to just cry and break down all the time. Yeah.
And it's incredibly healing in a weird way, like maybe not, solely, obviously there's a space for therapy and kind of trauma-informed practice, but there's almost,
even saying that, like, where part of the idea for Giggle, like what inspired my mum to think of it was, so I'd come back to Australia. I'd been living in America for a long time, and I was back here on a holiday, and I ended up staying longer, and I went into therapy. I was a shell of a person.
Yeah.
And I couldn't write. I was just and it's since learnt that my brain was sort of in survival mode, because if I didn't write, then I wouldn't go into rooms with them. But it was like destroying my dream. Like, the only thing I wanted to do. And it was my therapist who said, you need a strong female support network in your life at all times. And so that's what I was telling my mom. And she was like, well, let's make one. And I said, well, yeah, like, why not have a strong female support network in the palm of your hand, accessible to you whenever you need it? No matter where you are in the world, if you go on, especially onto Google Talk, which is like, it's sort of it's a hybrid of like Twitter and Reddit and Facebook group type thing. And so you post publicly. I mean, if you post something on there, there's going to be at least one other woman in the world awake who will see it and be like, okay, yeah, I'm here for you. What do you want to say?
I love
that we've never really had anything like that. And that's why I'm very much like, I mean, I am in general anyway, but I'm like, I'm not going to apologize for this. We need this.
We do.
The onus is all of the people who criticize people, and there's a lot, the onus is on them to explain to everyone why they've got a problem with women having a support network in the palm of their hands, why they've got a problem with women being able to find other women to live with for roommates, why they've got a problem with women finding women to do freelance work with, for lesbians to date, for women going through menopause to find other women to talk about it with. The onus is on them to tell us why that's controversial, why that's an issue. It's not on us.
No, that's a very good point. And it's not a point that the media coverage around Giggle seems to have taken in terms of having to justify the vitriol towards it at all.
Even like the Verge.com tech website, they've written a few articles now on Giggle, and they get things wrong. I mean, they're just like straight up like misinformation, like actual like fake news, to use that horrible term. And every time I've emailed them and said, one, you never even reached out to me for a comment. And two, here I am giving you one, and here are the actual facts. And they don't retract anything. They don't change anything. They don't respond to me. Nothing. They just pretend I don't exist.
I read one of the Verge's articles about Giggle this morning, just while I was trying to get into the headspace. And it says at the end, Giggle did not respond to comment. And I just thought that's unlikely, given that, I don't know, given all I know of Sall.
Yeah, I'm pretty vocal about this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, even my I think I changed it on my Twitter. I had it for a while, like DM me for a comment. I love to chat. And I think I took it off because they weren't. I was like, I'm not an idiot. You won't do it. Yeah, I mean, I think with places like that, one of the issues that what they try and hinge it all on is they'll be like, oh, we're fine with a female in this space, but we don't like the security you have, like the AI technology for the onboarding. And I'm like, well, lots of things to say about that. First of all, you obviously don't know what it is. We get a lot of articles about like how Giggle guesses your gender identity. No,
and you're dystopian. That's the word that keeps coming up in the media coverage.
I know, that one always made me laugh. I'm like, well, of course you'd think like a place just full of females was dystopian. It says a lot more about you than it does about Giggle.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, they one Verge article recently said that Google guesses your gender identity. No, it doesn't. No, that's impossible. Who the hell knows what anyone's gender identity is these days? We don't make any claims to guess someone's gender identity. It's just, are you male or female? And anyone who says that you can't tell if someone's male or female by looking at them is lying to you. Everybody knows. Our instincts know. Every single one. And I find it incredibly disturbing, even just to go off that they're trying to say to women that it's wrong to have that instinct. Because in the event that you're walking alone at night, you know exactly who's walking towards you, and you're not stopping to ask their pronouns.
No. And I think instinct is so important, and yet so kind of submerged. I think, like, just growing up as a woman, I think the worst experiences that I had were kind of before I began to sort of very explicitly say to myself and give myself permission to get out of situations if something was going wrong. Because I think initially I'd always think, you know, well, I try and rationalize it. I try and think this person.
Benefit of the doubt. Oh, it's like they're really nice. No, wait, what? Maybe I'm not being naive. All of that crazy stuff.
Exactly, all of that. And then
I don't want to be seen as a bitch.
Yeah, or kind of. There's almost a sense. I think there was almost a sense of initially thinking that if I acknowledged that someone might be attracted to me, even if I really didn't want them to be, then there was something incredibly big-headed about that. Like, what if I was wrong?
Yes. Yeah.
And then I think realizing that actually it doesn't say anything about me if someone twice my age is coming on to me or not. It's not to do with who I am as a person or even the way I look. There's just a very specific male-female thing that a lot of men seem to perpetuate or kind of take part in.
When I was 27 in Hollywood, I was a 27-year-old screenwriter, and I was dating an agent. He's an agent at CAA, which is the biggest talent agency in the world. And he said he was 42. He actually lied about his age. He was 44. I don't know. I've never known why he shaved 2 years off it. Like, he was there going, look at all those youthful 42-year-olds. I wonder. But so we were together for like 13, 14 months. I mean, it was a total brain fart era of my life, because I was very vulnerable when I met him, because all the stuff had just started happening. And so I never liked him, but he was older and powerful in the industry. And I did feel a bit safe, and I was. For that 13 months, I was completely protected. No one did anything to me for those 13 months, except for him. There was not physically anything, but he psychologically did a lot of stuff. Because men in their 40s who go after girls in their 20s, there's a power play there. Yeah. It's not like stuff's tighter. No. Like, a man would bang a potato. They don't care about that sort of stuff when it comes to it. It's power.
Yeah.
And so so after that relationship ended, it was almost like clockwork. Like, just instantly. The next meeting I went to, it's like how somehow everyone knew. I told no one. I didn't even I never even sat in meetings saying I was with him. But people knew. And then when we no longer were, people knew as well. And so suddenly I was free game. There was no one there to protect me. I wasn't spoken for.
Yeah. And it speaks to that kind of, I mean, it's almost the same impulse that man had when he emailed your dad. Like, that, you know, it doesn't matter. The woman doesn't matter. Respecting her boundaries or talking to her as a person, that's kind of irrelevant. It's all about the men. It's really strange.
Even if you just take something like Hollywood, I say this all the time when I was there. Like, well, one thing I used to say to them all, I'd be like, is everyone else aware that there's like a whole world outside of this 5-mile radius? Because they don't seem to realize it. But I would also be like, the vision of success men have in Hollywood, and in most industries, to be fair, when you get really successful, you're going to get like young, hot supermodels, like just falling off you. You're going to get so much power and respect. Everyone's going to stop and listen to what you have to say. When women get really successful, I don't know, what am I going to get? A cat? Like more cats? Like, you know, there's no glamorization. And I think that needs to change. I think we need to really start glamorizing, it doesn't have to be glamorizing, but really selling like this really great future of successful women, that it's not this lonely at the top. No, you still have friends. Like,
yeah,
like still, and there are still people who actually treat, like, there are nice people out there who will treat you like a human being.
Yeah.
But it was very much in Hollywood that all of these guys, and then they weren't really successful yet, but they knew that they were on that way, and so they would just sort of treat you like a piece of meat on the way, because they were like, you know, you're just part of my journey to get to where I'm going to be, and I'm going to have a supermodel hanging off my arm eventually. Like,
and I think that does take, it's not something that we acknowledge perhaps as much as we should, is the psychological toll that comes with not even the most kind of obviously violent or traumatic kind of experiences, but with the constantly being worn down by people casually treating you like less than a person over time.
So
and
the first day that I went to therapy for all of this, it just on the day, on the drive there, every time I got to lights, I was stopping because Humans of New York, remember the Instagram account, Humans of New York?
We have a Humans of Cambridge, so I guess
this is on the New York one. At that particular time, he was in Rwanda, and he was, I think Brandon, he was interviewing people who had survived the Rwandan genocide. And there was this particular story that day, and it was like a 10-part story. So you had to sort of keep waiting for him to post the next one to find out more about it. And this is my first day of therapy, going about, like, you know, sexual abuse in Hollywood. But by the time I got there, I'd finished reading the last one, and I was like, I don't feel I have any problems compared to what this woman has survived. I mean, you can't compare them. And my therapist told me that they are two completely different things. Yes, that there are people on this planet who are surviving things or have survived things that we can't comprehend.
Yeah.
Because we are very lucky. It doesn't mean our stuff doesn't feel anything. Human bodies process trauma really differently, and that trauma, we'd all go into that survival mode as well. It doesn't, you can still be like, this horrible stuff that's happened to me is still really,
it's not like an equation where there's, this is X number of trauma.
But I do always try and have some perspective with it as well, because there are sometimes when I'll read things what women go through, and I'm like, I couldn't survive that. I wouldn't. There's some things that what women survive where the strength that they have, I think I would choose not to survive it. I'm
reading a book called Their Battlefields Are Bodies by Christina at the moment. She's a war correspondent.
Is it good? I've not read it, but I've heard about it.
It's so good. I mean, good feels like it's impossible to find the right adjectives. But she's essentially gone around the world and spoken to women who've survived rape in war zones, and kind of talked about the way that rape has been conceptualized as a war crime, sort of too little too late, but we're getting there now, hopefully. But it's kind of, it's so difficult to read it. Like, you know, when do you read that? Like, at what point in the day? In the bath, like before you go to bed? I don't know.
I was reading Malala's book. Name escapes me right now. It was one time when I came back from LA. I was visiting here in Australia with my parents for Christmas, and I was laying on the beach. This beautiful day on the beach, reading her book, and I had to stop. I was like, I can't. I feel incredibly guilty.
Yeah.
Right now, like in my paradise, basically.
Yeah.
There is a setting to read those sorts of things. Have you ever watched, it's on Netflix, it's called City of Joy?
No,
everyone watched this documentary. Okay, it's so amazing. It is about, City of Joy is this place, this female only sanctuary in Congo, and it's where survivors of rape as a weapon of war go to, and they have two sections to it. There's the medical side where they fix, some of these women turn up there
Yeah.
Just absolutely near death. And then there's the rehabilitation, and it's getting to everything for getting these women ready to just live a day, get in touch with their emotions, being able to get a job, and also getting them connected again to their bodies. And it's the most amazing documentary. Everyone has to watch it. It's so powerful. And that's one of the ones with some of the stories in that these women had been through. I was like I wouldn't survive. I don't think I have that strength in me. So when you see what some people go through, I just no, I don't think I could do it.
It is unimaginable. And there's this weird, it's kind of this weird paradox where I think, you read about these things and they are completely unimaginable, and you can't comprehend a fraction of what these women have gone through, and yet at the same time you kind of have a tiny hint from like experiences where you've been kind of infringed upon, or your boundaries have been crossed, and you just trying to kind of extrapolate from that is completely, it just doesn't work, and yet it's still enough to make it kind of viscerally horrible to read, as well as kind of abstractly horrible.
Different societies have different issues as well. So like women in, say, the Congo, what their daily issue is trying to avoid being gang raped by soldiers. That's their main issue. There's us sort of in countries like England, Australia, America. We have rape as a threat. It's there every day. There's a reason we don't go running at night or walk down certain streets, do certain things. We're lucky we have, hopefully, most of the time, the choice not to have to do those sorts of things. But then also just in the professional fields we want to work in, that we have to earn a living. We have to deal with crap all the time. And so it is stressful when you're trying to earn money and you've got that hurdle. It is incredible. No one can take that away from you, how stressful it is.
It's just an incredible vulnerability at the end, money. And I think you talking about
said on Google Talk, I'll shout out to her, Muddy. She said a great thing tonight. There was someone who posted it was a lady in Ireland that's just been murdered by her husband. She told her husband to not, like, he'd obviously been very violent. She kicked him out and said, "You're not welcome here anymore." And 2 days later, I think he strangled her. Another one, and this lady on People Talk, she said, when are men going to get tired of hearing these stories? We're tired of them. We're done.
Yeah.
But the only people who can stop this are men. We can't stop it.
No. I think that making women-only spaces in the way that you have, and there are things that we can do productively as well as point it out, but I completely agree that there's kind of this fundamental point at which, like, they just need to stop.
Yeah. Stop murdering women. It shouldn't be a challenge.
No, it's difficult. I think that there's something really interesting in all this, and really kind of lovely about the way that Giggle kind of works, in terms of how we've been talking about how kind of unknowable certain experiences are and other women's lives can be, and yet at the same time Giggle has members in 88 countries.
Yeah. There are women on Giggle Talk specifically from Saudi Arabia, from South America, is Brazil, Argentina, a specific island that is now escaping me. I'm bad with geography, so I apologize. Then obviously America, Canada, UK, Scotland, Japan, India, just everywhere. We're just all communicating normal, like, just there's no drama. It's just lovely to hear different experiences that especially in lockdown, like some people have been in lockdown for a long time. I'm in Australia. We're very, very lucky. I've not been in lockdown for over a year. So that's pretty normal in that respect. We just can't travel. And of sharing experiences was the whole point of Giggle to begin with, of just being able to share your experiences. Sometimes it's just a really great thing to not know that you're not crazy.
Yeah.
You're going like, am I insane? Is this like what I'm thinking or doing wrong? And then you just go and ask women, and they'll be like, oh no, I've done the same thing. Like, okay, I'm not the only one. Cool. Continue. My mum was saying today, actually, she's like, you know, when you're with a group of girlfriends and you're chatting, and then even if it's like one of your like or husbands or partner joins, like male joins into the conversation and he walks up, the whole tone changes immediately.
Yeah.
And on Giggle, it doesn't happen. They're just not there.
Just endless
Girl talk, basically. And like sometimes it's really frivolous and silly and funny, and other times it's really serious.
Yeah.
And then a lot in the middle. And we shouldn't, we're complex human beings like everyone else. And we don't have to justify wanting these spaces. The people who are against them have to justify them. Because we won these rights.
Yeah.
Already been fought.
Yeah. And that's actually so there are two things I wanted to definitely talk to you about as well. One of which that would have been a great segue to about your mum, basically, and the role of kind of, you guys working together like intergenerationally, like, and this being quite an intergenerational project, just in the context that we're currently in, where there's such a tendency to denigrate kind of the previous generation of women and their achievements in kind of,
it's like the one largest ageism is like the one discrimination that's still completely acceptable.
Yeah, exactly. And so specific, like within conversations about feminism as well. I think because I'm at uni and I'm surrounded by people who you could conceptualize as liberal feminists or alternatively not as feminists, who kind of tend to view kind of women from any, even slightly older women as kind of inherently ignorant or bigoted. And it's certainly in terms of the second wave movement in the 70s and 80s, but then also just older women generally, whether or not they're feminists. Obviously, we've got this whole thing about Karens. I don't know if that's come to Australia or not, but
it's here. Yeah, I hate it.
I find it so frustrating. I
hate it. It's so stupid. It's just another just hidden thing. Now, I will say with my mom, and I don't think she'll be listening to this eventually. I don't think she'll disagree with me when I say this. My mom was never like vocally feminist or anything when I was growing up. I get more of this from my dad because it came from that question everything that he would drill into me and use your brain.
Yeah.
Think about everything, form an opinion. You have to have an opinion on everything. And so that's how I became a feminist. So he just sort of accidentally raised one. But mom wasn't as much. My mom's much girlier than I am.
Yeah.
And just like the most like delightful, happy, funny person to be around. I've turned her into a feminist. So it's sort of the other way around with us. Yeah. I don't think she'd disagree with that. If she did, I'd tell her she was wrong.
That's the privilege of that relationship.
Yeah. No, I mean, and so when we're working together, we get along really, really well. We have our different roles. I mean, like anything, like sometimes she does not like us having to talk about the trans issue. She really hates it. And sometimes she says to me, like, do not speak about it. She gets really angry about it. But I have said to her, we have to talk about it. We didn't set out to be part of this.
Yeah.
Of being a space for females. I know that we're in this world, and it's a time where women need women to speak up about being women. So I unapologetically do that. I wish we didn't have to have this fight.
Yeah.
It is actually such a stupid fight. It's an utter waste of time.
Yeah, no.
We could be having really productive conversations about how to help, especially gender non-conforming men.
Yeah.
Whether it's third spaces is the best option, whatever. There's so many great solutions to that where we can celebrate everything. No one has a problem here. The only problem we have is the lies.
Yeah.
I don't care what you wear. I don't even really care if there's men appropriating women's clothes. I don't really care. It doesn't bother me. It doesn't really affect me day to day.
And I think a lot of women have maybe become more kind of a lot more severe about things like that, whereas before they wouldn't have cared because of the general encouragement or like the bigger concessions that we're being asked to make.
There's definitely areas where I'm very severe about it. Like I will not accept misinformation. I will not accept things that aren't true.
Yeah.
It's just as simple as that. And I did a tweet tonight and I just said, like, if you are attacking women for using the word women and you're abusing women for standing up for our rights, you're not a human rights movement. And these are part of the lies that I hate. It's like we could be having really serious, great conversations about this. We could actually solve all of these problems in the better part of 4 days, I think.
Yeah.
And implement everything. It's none of it is as controversial as it's been made out to be, but there's just a lot of. I do think that it's a power play. I don't think it's a coincidence that it's gotten this bad globally post Me Too. I think this is in part a reaction to that.
Yeah.
That's why a lot of powerful men have gotten behind it. I don't know, it's an accident. Why some of the powerful women, especially the women that are connected to those movements, have gotten behind it, I would have to say they're just fearful.
Yeah. Well, I suppose it's very, I don't know, on the surface, this kind of narrative is very palatable and,
yes,
all couched in the kind of language of civil rights and
almost on the surface, the palatable part. Of course, we're like, I don't want to be a bigot. I want to be nice to everybody. Of course, who disagrees with that? You're a psychopath if you disagree with that.
Yeah.
No woman is disagreeing with that either. It's when you get to the next level. And I think there's a change happening now because of the Olympics, the sports stuff.
Yeah.
I do, in a way, just on like an anecdotal opinion thing. I'm like, sport is what it takes.
No, I feel the same. Oh, I mean, I'll take it. I'm happy. I'll go with it. But
I really care about women's sports, and I want to protect them. And like these poor female athletes, especially musical lifters who are missing out on the Olympics and all of this stuff. Like, I want to help them and do everything I can for them. But I'm like, if you listen to these women 10 years ago, this wouldn't be happening.
Or the lesbians for the last 5.
If you listen to lesbians, I think Julie Bindel said she started talking about this in 1997.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
What year were you born?
A year after that. So
there you go. So she's been talking about it for your entire life.
Yeah. And
yeah, I'm like, and so sometimes when people be like these angry feminists, I'm like, I am in awe of how composed they are, because if in 25, 30 years I'm still talking about this shit, it's not going to be pretty. Like I don't have that kind of patience or composure.
Julie Bindel is a particularly, I mean, the rage is evident. She spits rage, but it comes out so articulately. I'm kind of.
Oh, I know. It's just part of it. I think is that brilliant British accent, because you guys can get away with saying stuff because it just sounds so intelligent and classy. Like if an Australian says it, people sound like, it doesn't work. And then an American can just sound a bit more arrogant, but yeah, the British can sort of get away with it, I think.
Oh, well, I need all the help I can get when it comes to being articulate about this. It's so hard to just, I don't know, it's so hard to go about normal life and everyday life and not go on about it all the time. But I think
it is, because it's like, it's just like a fundamental truth. Men are men, women are women. Like men.
Are we not past this?
Yeah. This is really basic stuff. I once had a little bit of a Twitter spat with a woman who claimed to be a gynecologist, but she was like a blue tick one, but she was very trans rights activist.
Right.
And she was saying all this stuff, and I'm like, but you're a gynecologist. I'm like, you can see all this stuff on Twitter for performance, sure.
Yeah.
But you know as well as I do that when it comes down to it, in a life-saving situation, surely this goes out the window. Like when you're administering drugs to somebody, you ask whether they're male or female first.
Yeah.
Because there's a huge difference.
Yeah, I bloody hope they do. Anyway, we're in trouble if
Yeah, it's like, yeah, if you don't, that's on you. And I feel sorry
yeah.
for any patients you have. But like, this is really serious stuff.
Yeah.
Did you see the thing about the COVID form today? Something because it only asks male or female sex because that's the only thing that the COVID virus gives a shit about.
It's clearly not. Yeah, it's clearly not woke enough. It needs to sort itself.
I'm so sorry, COVID, the virus is not validating you. Lucky, just be thankful it's not killing you.
Well, exactly. Yeah, and I kind of I wanted to go back to something you were just talking about, kind of in terms of narratives and stuff. And again, kind of going back to media coverage as well. I think it's interesting that you mentioned Me Too, because given your story, you'd think that this would be being talked about, given that the conversation about Me Too is something that has been quite well covered in media generally. I don't know if you'd agree with that or not.
No, I'll say this. When, just before Google launched, we emailed all women's media and everything and told them about Google and, you know, my story, Mum and I created it, how it came to be. They all responded and were all over us. It's now they don't respond to us.
Yeah. So
yeah,
you've
so I have all the responses. Yeah. Yeah. That's why my next sort of thing I really want to start pushing is that women's media is letting women down. I know there can be arguments made about how maybe it always has in terms of body image, different advice, things like I understand all of that. And that's definitely conversation to have, but just from its just on a total premise base that it's media, women's media for women, they promote themselves as this, that they have all abandoned women in this fight.
Yeah.
All of them. And I don't think it's unforgivable because I think that, well, I think it's quite immoral at the moment. We have to be able to extend olive branches and build bridges, because if otherwise, if you just go like, it's unforgivable, I won't speak to you.
Yeah.
One amendment there, I'm very happy with Mayor Forstater saying no to BBC Women's Hour. Did you see that when they wanted to postpone, like, oh, they'll only speak to her after the case, after the verdict. She, like, instead of speaking to her now, she was like, no, you can speak to me now. Like, it's not like you can't like speak to the suffragettes after the men who said they can speak or not. You speak to me now. So that's very cool. But I email women's media in the UK, Australia, and the US constantly, saying let's like build a bridge. Because I want to end this narrative that women standing up for women's rights are disgusting bigots, because we're not. No. It's not like, and especially it's not like lesbian women just went, you know what? We know a thing or two about
the best way to oppress people. Let's just turn it all around.
Why don't we just implement it while getting zero power of our own? Like, it would be absurd. So but I think women's media has a lot to answer for here, because it makes a lot of women appear to the other side as wrong, because they won't even give you attention. Your side won't even give you attention. Women won't. And it's like, you don't have to agree, that's fine. But you're a journalist. Report the truth. One of my things, like when I've, in Australia this year, has been all about sexual assault and a sexual assault in the workplace and women, how women are treated. I have emailed everyone.
Yeah.
Because the whole thing is about women speaking up. And I'm like,
here you are.
Yeah. I've had Australian male journalists, because I wrote an open letter to the media. I've had Australian male journalists mock it and then turn around and tweet things about in support of how women should use their voice and write articles about it. And I'm like, they're total hypocrites. I've had male journalists here send me videos of themselves masturbating. I've contacted their editors, and the editor has defended it and then written articles about how bad sexual assault in the workplace is, and going, and how violating. I'm going, yeah, I felt pretty violated too. And
Jesus
no one will listen to me. And there's only one reason why.
Yeah. And what do you think it is that has made you, I mean, because you were saying earlier that, your mum maybe says, let's stop talking about the turf stuff a little bit. Let's focus on the mission. What is it, do you think? And I read your open letter, actually. I loved your open letter. And I remember you writing in that about how you felt you couldn't lie to the media, like you couldn't compromise on the narrative and just give them the one they wanted and ignore the rest.
Well, I can't tell a lie, because that started because there was a editor here in Australia who, when I stood up for, there was a private ladies baths here. It was a beach thing, female only beach place here that came under attack. It's been that way it's been female only for 140 years. From back when women weren't allowed to go on the beach. This was like the part where they were allowed to go, and now it's this place where a lot of Muslim women, nuns, cancer patients go. Like, this is really like a very much an ocean refuge for women in Sydney. And they were coming under attack for being transphobic, and I stood up for them. And this one editor of the online publication in Australia said, well, if you won a turf, you'd get, maybe we'd publish you. And I was like, but you're calling me a made-up word with made-up implications when I'm not the one spreading hate or anything.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to turn around and tell some sort of lie in order to be able to get attention. Because what does that say about me? What does that say about Giggle? What does that say about everything that women have had to go through to get the right to speak? Yeah. I don't actually talk, and I say this to Mum all the time, I don't talk about the trans stuff that often. I actually just talk about women's rights most of the time.
Yeah.
Whatever I'm sort of referring to in that, sometimes it's that, sometimes it's not. I mean, it depends on the day, what something crap has happened to women that I'm responding to. There is something every day.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if I thought that it would make a difference if I stopped using my voice and if that would help, I would, but I don't see how that would happen. You know what I mean? If I've got to stop speaking for women's rights, for women's media to speak for me,
what have you actually gained? Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't add up to me. And as I've explained to Mum, it's not anything that I've said that's the issue. It's the fact that Google is for females in the security works. That's the issue.
Yeah. And
I mean, I'm pretty tame with what I say. There's I go out of my way to make sure I don't, try to, purposely offend anyone or anything like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things. You just have to keep going with it, and find special people who will help you speak up. Like Rita Panahi in Australia, journalist for Sky News. She's been amazing. She's the one that I can, anytime there's something, I can message her and she will put me on Sky News and let me have a voice. I am just forever grateful to her.
What was her name?
Rita Panahi. She's amazing. Okay. And she, it is one of those things, she's just brave. She just says it, but she just says the truth, and she gets attacked relentlessly on Twitter for it, and I'm sure in other platforms as well. But just stands up for the truth and what's right. And when I first went on Sky News and people were saying, oh, well, are you alt-right or anything? I'm like, no, this is not a political issue. Women are women no matter what political party they favor. Biological sex exists.
Yeah.
Things like biological sex exists outside of language. You could take away all words and it still exists.
Yeah.
Sort of the madness of it all. So yeah, I'm very grateful for people like Rita. Actually, she is so far in terms of mainstream one's the only one. But I keep trying, and I know it's just you just have to be consistent.
And
yeah, I mean, no one no one has ever like given into listening to women easily, have they?
No. And I really believe that the more individuals stand up, like the more acceptable it becomes. So we have a lot of people who are anonymous in the UK, and I think worldwide, who are interested in this stuff. And I completely respect that. It's necessary in a lot of cases, especially when it comes to losing your job or where you're supporting people, but also just in terms of the kind of mental well-being.
I was saying this to women on Google Talk the other night, actually. I was like, I completely get that there's some women who cannot speak up and use their voice out of fear. You've got families, you've got jobs. Totally cool. It's not the time to do it. What you guys can do is support women's only spaces.
Yeah.
Ones of us who can speak up will do that. That's fine. But support like the app, support the podcasts, and then they can continue.
Yeah.
And everyone's done their little bit. You know what I mean?
And isn't there is it, I can't remember if it's Google Talk or another aspect of the app, isn't one of your kind of elements of it aimed at helping women kind of almost develop like their public voice, like just
Google Talk. Yeah, Google Talk. So Google Talk works exactly like Twitter, essentially. It's 280 characters. You post. There you go. The only difference with something like, say, if you want to compare it directly to Twitter, is, well, one, obviously it's female only, but we don't have followers at this point. It's something that there are different things that we will introduce as with growth, that we definitely want input from women. But with this, I wanted there to be just a main feed where everyone's posts go to that main feed. So you being heard is not reliant on whether you have lots of followers. Everyone has the equal choice, like chance to be heard. And so that, sorry, go on.
Oh no, sorry. I think we had a bit of a lag there. But no, yeah, I was just gonna say I really like that. I think especially because there's this broader conversation about social media and sort of news and how information is spreading and everything. And maybe it's interesting to remember that Giggle actually is, it's as well as being kind of unique in all these ways, it is a social media platform, and it's potentially an interesting part of that conversation.
Yeah, so when I was designing it, I made certain choices to help with or avoid sort of those mental health downfalls. So for example, we don't have likes at the moment. So I didn't want that popularity contest on there, because it's about replying, it's about having conversations. And we're going to introduce something like that, but it's going to be a collective decision of, okay, what do we all want? Do we want them? Do we not? Do we want to have the option to have them and not? Because we do have, like on post at the moment, you've got the option when you post, you could just put your opinion out there and cancel replies and not allow anyone to reply to it. Because sometimes you just want to say something and you're like, I feel good that I just sent it out there and people are reading it. I don't want to hear what they have to say.
Yeah.
And then on the top of every post, we have a hashtag title, and this is what sort of turns it into a forum. And so say, for example, okay, so say if you're only wanting to use Giggle Talk for like gender critical, because that's closed down, or menopause, okay, so those two things. Well, you would just do all of your posts with the hashtag gender critical and all of your posts with the hashtag menopause, and then you'd go into the search thing, look or press on that hashtag, and you're going to see every single post that comes with that hashtag. And so you can just join all of those conversations. And yeah, so it's pretty simple. And it's just a way, I wanted it to be a way that every woman could be heard equally, that women can advertise their businesses on there, podcasts, YouTube channels, like any blog, anything. Like you can, there's no restrictions with stuff like that. There's no moderation once you're on the platform. The moderation is the onboarding. Obviously there's rules like, you know, don't incite violence and hate speech. There's the normal like society, like decent human being rules. And you can report users if they're breaking them, but like you're not going to get, you know, suspended for saying truth about women.
Well, maybe this is a good sort of moment to say to everyone on Mumsnet, like I know that everyone on Mumsnet, there's a huge thriving kind of community of women talking to each other, but there's a lot of fear as well about being kind of shut down or of posts being removed or whatever else. So I mean,
well, yeah, I mean, and look, I'm all for like, I'm not a user, but I'm a fan of Mumsnet. I'm a fan of all the different platforms that exist for women, and there's this, like, enough room in the market for us all to exist.
Yeah.
Yes, Giggle's point of difference, what we can guarantee as much as humanly possible, and will always, if any mistakes are ever made, rectify it, because Giggle is female only. In the event that we've ever missed somebody, and somebody that's not supposed to be there gets on, women can know that when they report it to us, they will be heard, and that their report will be respected.
Yeah.
That's one of the main differences, because I'm sick of reporting things to Twitter and then basically coming back with a you deal with it. Like, okay, just another death threat to add to the pile.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's amazing, actually. So far, from my knowledge, no death threats or rape threats on Twitter.
I mean, that is incredibly impressive for a social media platform in 2021.
Also, it may be in, maybe we could get like a Guinness Book of Records thing of this, of like number of like the Giggles, like the only social network to ever not have a rape threat.
Yes. Yeah, I think, well, that's something that women's media should be potentially doing, is talking about, you know, what there is out there for women in terms of, you know, where they can have these conversations and what the benefits are of these spaces. So hopefully they get it together soon and start.
And I know, like, my thing is, I will say, is I never blame like individual journalists for this sort of stuff, because I've no doubt that there's a lot of women journalists that have wanted to write about it. I think I've been a journalist. It's not your choice. It's the editor, is what it comes down to. You're cheapest out of this situation. So yeah. I also get that there might be some women out there who don't want to come under attack. I do have sympathy for that. It's hard, but I do, because I know what it's like to be under attack every day. I know that if you might not want to write an article and delve into it, because it's just, you know, you live by yourself and it's your dream job, and so you don't want to get cancelled and feel unsafe in your home. It's a weird time. I do get it. Not unreasonable, but at the same time, I'm very much like, come on, we all need to work together, because the more women, and especially the more women in media who speak up in support of women on this, the sooner this will all end.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think we could end it in a week.
It's just this massive taboo around it, really, I think. There's kind of, and as soon as anyone does speak up, at the moment the system is just to sort of smack them back down like whack-a-mole before anyone can hear what they're saying.
My wildest nightmare did I think that there would be taboo about saying the word woman.
It's
like, you couldn't, if I'd woken up out of a coma right now and someone told me what was happening, I'd be like dying.
If I was gonna, genuinely, and if I was going to write a dystopian novel and I didn't know what was going on and I thought of this as an idea, I'd probably just sort of discard it as too far-fetched.
Yes, right. Totally. Like, no one's going to believe this.
Yeah, what a mess. But definitely reason for optimism. We've got Giggle's growing every day. There's, I think, just generally, I've seen so many more people speaking up in the last few months, and so many more conversations.
I feel like while there's lots of things going in a horrible direction, there's lots of things going in a positive direction, and I'm always a very much glass half full and like eternal optimist about things. Yeah. Women have fought for a lot. We've never ever been given anything for no effort. This is just another little fight we have to have, and you know, we'll win it. I do sometimes think about, like, you know, what it must have been like when women, the suffragettes, were getting the right to vote or fighting for the right to vote. They had no precedent of women winning it. No, nothing. It was just like just the terror and the uncertainty of that. We know we can win, so we have that on our side, and so it's a lot easier for us in that respect. No, definitely. Hopefully we won't have to resort to sort of blowing up any telephone boxes or things like the suffragette strikes, because, you know, I like my food. No, mine might be a chocolate. Definitely huge reason for optimism, I think. And this has been a really nice conversation to have, optimism. I love chatting with you. No, it's been it's actually been a really good start to my Friday morning, and hopefully
a good end to your, what is it, Friday night, Saturday night?
It's Friday night here. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm so confused by times.
I'll do a little bit more giggle work, and then my little overly glamorous life, I'll go to sleep, wake up, and do more giggle work.
Lovely. Yeah. I guess before we wrap up, I wanted to say a big thank you to Object for letting us use their Zoom platform once again, as they have through the whole replatforming series. And thanks to Mary for giving up yet more of her time, this time of Friday morning, to be there and make this happen. And yeah, before we wrap up, is there anything you want to kind of tell us about that's coming up, or what's next for you and what's next for Giggle?
So I do want to say, like, just if like download Giggle, check out Giggle Talk first, because from there you can learn about the other parts of the app, which are like the private connection parts of it. So Giggle Talk, first icon on the home screen, is definitely the first place to go to, and see women from all around the world talking, posting their opinions, having fun, and tell any woman in your life who you think would benefit from it. Word of mouth is key for us, and I do have a mission to show the world what women can do, and we just group together. But our next thing is we're finally getting ready to start our first ever global marketing campaign, which we've done no marketing yet. We were getting ready to start, well, we were doing some testing recently, but then Google ads got banned from Facebook. So that was a little bit of a drama. Still banned, but that's fine. So we're not going to advertise there. So we've got lots of exciting things happening there, and then lots of updates constantly happening with the app itself, and every day something new opportunities, new exciting things happen. So there'll be like we talk about them all the time when people talk. So yeah, to stay up to date with everything, and yeah, just tell your friends.
Yeah, I'll put the link to everything I can think of in the description down below. I hope you enjoyed this wonderful piece of bonus material, everyone. I definitely did. And big thank you to Sall for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. I loved it. I really did.
Okay.